All right, folks, we are going to get into part 2 of the evaluation process. So on the part 2 video, we're going to talk about cognitive ability. That can mean a lot of different things. So it really just depends on what disability we're looking at. What I'm going to do is go over the different cognitive areas you would look at if you're doing specific learning disability. When we're looking at things like cognitive ability and say general intelligence, things like that, we are usually looking at an overall IQ or general intelligence. Branching off that are various different processing areas for the purposes of learning disability, and more than likely what you're going to see in most evaluations, you're not going to test every single processing area because they don't necessarily relate to a learning disability, or so some of them might be addressed through other evaluation processes such as like motor skills, things like that. Under processing, there's we call it the king and queen. So the king and queen are crystallized intelligence and then fluid intelligence. So crystallized intelligence being intelligence that is acquired. So it's usually acquired knowledge, things like that. Fluid intelligence is, I always say, is think on their feet. So if I give them a new challenge or a new problem, they can kind of work off things that they've learned in the past and kind of figure out that problem. Underneath the king and queen, you have other a little bit more narrow or broad processing areas. One would be your memory. So you're going to look at short-term memory, long-term storage, and retrieval. Short-term memory is going to be usually tested doing, you're going to look at a quick tidbit of auditory working memory and visual working memory. Simply put, can I give them a list of things? Can I show them things? Can they remember it? Or can they remember it, manipulate it in their head, and give it back to me in some kind of a way? Long-term storage and retrieval are usually things that we've already learned in the past, pretty much ingrained us. Things like letter recognition, things like number recognition, and maybe words that are commonly used, the CVC words, things like that. And how quickly can we store that information, keep it in our heads, and then can we retrieve it quickly? What that tells us is things that we teach them, can they keep it long term? And then processing speed. So really that's scanning skills. If I gave you a passage and I told you, hey, I need you to quickly find out all the thes in the passage, like how quickly could you scan this and look for information that you need? Processing speed, you'll hear a lot of that. Oh, they have slow processing speed. You want to make sure that's what they're talking about and not slower processing like auditory processing or short-term memory or things like that. So you want to make sure that they're explaining to you that it's either processing speed or another processing area that might be slower or not be functioning at the typical age level. And then you have visual spatial skills or visual processing. And a lot of that would be pattern recognition. It's has a motor component to it. And I've seen a lot of times that children who struggle with visual processing may struggle with math calculation because they'll see what they see. What they see is not necessarily interpreted correctly in their brain. Things are look too similar. They may not be able to recognize the differences, things like that. And then you have auditory processing. So this encompasses a ton of different things. The most common part of auditory processing that's tested in cognitive ability is phonological processing. And that's really gives us a good basis of whether or not they're going to get those basic reading skills and how well they process phonemes or individual letter sounds, and can they manipulate letter sounds and manipulate words in their head. Those are the general processing areas that we test for cognitive ability. Will every evaluation have all of them tested? No. Sometimes we may give a full battery, a full cognitive assessment, and then 3 years later go, you know what? Let's just look at this area a little bit closer, and I might just give a complete memory test, a little bit deeper look into that memory. So it just depends.